He built the iPod. He co created the iPhone. He built Nest and sold it to Google for $3.2 billion. dollars. So when Tony Fadell sits down and says the biggest danger of the AI era is not the one everyone is panicking about, it is worth stopping to listen. On Lenny's podcast this week, Fadell made a claim that cuts against almost every headline you have read. He says AI is probably not going to replace you, but something quieter will. He calls it cognitive surrender, the slow, comfortable habit of handing your own judgment over to the machine, one decision at a time, until you have nothing left that is actually yours. I watched the entire conversation, so you do not have to. And I pulled out the part that matters most. What the man behind the two most influential products of the last 20 years thinks you have to protect, and how he actually builds. Because the skill he says will decide everything is the one almost nobody is training. First, why this voice and not another hot take? Most people giving you AI advice have never shipped a product that touched a billion lives. Tony Fadell has done it more than once. In the 1990s, he was at General Magic, the legendary team that imagined the smartphone years before the world was ready for it. At Apple, he led the team that created the iPod, the device that rebuilt the entire music industry. Then he helped bring the iPhone into existence, the product that reshaped how all of us live. He left to start Nest, turned a boring thermostat into something people actually loved, and sold it to Google for $3.2 billion. dollars. Along the way, he collected more than 300 patents and wrote a book called Build that has quietly become a Bible for product people. So when Fadell talks about taste and judgment, he is not theorizing. He is describing the exact muscle he used to make objects that hundreds of millions of people chose to hold in their hands every single day. That track record is why this particular warning is worth taking seriously. So, what does he actually mean by cognitive surrender? Fadell's point is that AI is not going to march in and fire you on a Tuesday. What happens is softer and far more dangerous. You start letting it make the small calls. It drafts the email, so you stop choosing the words. It writes the code, so you stop understanding the system. It suggests the design, so you stop forming an opinion. Each handoff feels efficient. Each one is a tiny bid for thinking that you quietly give away. And he warns that builders are doing this fastest of all, shipping things they no longer truly understand. The risk is not that the machine becomes brilliant, it is that you slowly go dull, because the muscle you stop using is the muscle you lose. Fadell's framing flips the whole anxiety on its head. The question is not, will AI take my job? The real question is, how much of my own judgment am I willing to give away for a little convenience? And most people, he argues, are answering that question every day without ever noticing they are answering it. Here is the flip side of that warning, and it is the most hopeful thing he says. When AI makes creating almost free, the value does not disappear. It moves. It moves to the one thing the machine cannot hand you. Knowing what is actually worth making and whether the thing in front of you is any good. Fadell calls this taste and judgment, and he insists it is not some mystical gift you are born with. It is a trained sense, built from caring intensely, from studying what works, from 1,000 small decisions about what to keep and what to throw away. AI can generate 100 options in a second. It cannot tell you which one is right, because right depends on the human you are building for. He puts it simply. The things that truly stand out are the things that are really well thought through. In a world where everyone can produce infinite output, the rare and valuable skill becomes the ability to look at all of it and say, no, not that, this. That judgment is the edge. And it is the thing he spends the rest of the conversation teaching you how to build. So, how do you actually train that judgment? It starts, Fadell says, with where you begin. Most people now begin with the technology. They have a shiny new tool, AI in particular, and they go looking for something to do with it. He says that is backwards, and it is exactly how you build things nobody wants. His rule is the opposite: start from pain. In his words, I always start from pain. Are there new technologies to solve that pain? You find a real, sharp human frustration first, something that genuinely hurts, and only then do you ask whether a new technology can finally fix it. That is the Nest story in one line. Everybody had a thermostat. Everybody ignored it and quietly wasted energy and money because it was ugly and confusing. Fadl did not start with a cool chip. He started with the irritation, the boring object on the wall that nobody had loved in decades, and asked what it should have been all along. The pain is the compass. The technology is just what you reach for once you know exactly where you are going. The next piece of judgment is knowing when to trust data and when to ignore it. This is where Fadell tells one of the best stories in the whole conversation: the fight over the iPhone keyboard. Remember, at the time, the entire smartphone world ran on physical keyboards. The Blackberry was king. Every piece of market data, every customer survey, every reasonable analyst said people want real buttons they can feel. If Apple had followed the data, the iPhone would have shipped with a plastic keyboard, and history would look very different. They did not follow the data. They made an opinion based decision, a conviction call that a sheet of glass could become a better keyboard than any physical one. Fadell's point is sharp. For a version 1 product, something genuinely new, there is no data because the thing does not exist yet. All the data describes the old world, so you cannot survey your way to a breakthrough. You need taste and conviction to make the leap, and the courage to be temporarily wrong. Data is how you refine a mature product. Opinion is how you create a new one. Confuse the two, and you will only ever build slightly better versions of what already exists. Here is the part that should comfort anyone who has ever shipped something that flopped. Fadell is adamant that almost nothing great works the first time. He calls it the three generation rule. Even the iPod, the product that made his name, was not an overnight hit. The first version was expensive. It only worked with a Mac, and it sold modestly. It took roughly three generations, 3 rounds of fixing, learning, and rethinking before it became the cultural phenomenon we remember. Generation 1 gets the idea into the world. Generation 2 fixes everything you got wrong. Generation 3 is often where it finally clicks. This matters more than ever in the AI era because AI tempts you with the fantasy of a perfect version 1, generated instantly, with no struggle required. Fadell's whole career says that is an illusion. The struggle, the iteration, the willingness to fail a few times until you find your way, that is not wasted time. That is where the judgment actually gets built. The people who expect to nail it on the first try quit at generation 1, right before the thing would have worked. The ones who win simply refuse to stop. Now, a belief that makes a lot of engineers deeply uncomfortable. Fadell argues that marketing is not something you bolt on after the product is done. Marketing is part of the product. He says the iPod itself almost failed, not because the device was bad, but because at first people did not understand why they should care. The product is not just the object in the box, it is the entire journey. The moment you first hear about it, the words on the website, the feeling of opening the package, the story you tell yourself about why you bought it. If any part of that journey is confusing, the product fails, no matter how good the hardware is. Think of the line that sold the first iPod. Not 5 gigabytes of storage, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Same fact, completely different product. Because one of them speaks to an actual human being. Fadell's lesson for builders in the AI age is blunt. AI can help you make the thing faster than ever. But if you cannot make a person care about it, you have built nothing. The caring is your job. The machine cannot do that part for you. That leads straight into the skill Fadell says is the most underrated of all storytelling. And he means something very specific. Great products, he argues, are not sold by explaining what they do or how they work. They are sold by making people feel why they exist. He points to Steve Jobs as the master of this. When Jobs revealed the iPhone, he did not open with the chip or the specs. He told a story, he built tension, and he made you feel the why before he ever showed you the what. One of Fadell's most practical habits comes from this idea. Write the press release first. Before you build the product, before you write a single line of code, write the announcement as if the thing already exists. If you cannot tell a clear, compelling story about why this should exist, that is a signal. The product is not ready, or maybe should not be built at all. The story is not decoration, it is a test of whether your thinking is actually clear. And clear thinking, again, is just judgment wearing a different outfit. In the AI era, where anyone can generate the what, the human who owns the why becomes irreplaceable. Now, the warning aimed directly at builders, the one that ties this whole thing together. Fadell is not anti AI, he uses it. But he is blunt about a trap he is already watching people fall into. When you let AI generate code that you do not understand, you tend to get products that are brittle. They work in the demo, they impress in the moment, and then they crumble the second the real world pushes on them because nobody actually comprehends how they are held together. This is cognitive surrender made concrete. Speed with no understanding is not a shortcut. It is debt, and the bill always comes due. A real product has to be maintained, extended, and fixed for years. And you cannot maintain something you never understood in the first place. So, his advice is not to put the tools down, it is to stay the architect. Use AI to move faster, but keep your hands on the judgment. Understand the system, own the decisions, be able to look at what the machine produced and say with confidence whether it is actually any good. The moment you can no longer make that call, you have not gained a superpower. You have handed one away. So, where does a builder like this think the whole thing is heading? A couple of his predictions really stood out. First, Fadell believes voice is going to become the primary way we interact with AI. Not typing, not tapping through menus, but talking. The way the science fiction we grew up on always promised. Whoever nails that interaction, the way the iPhone nailed touch, owns the next decade. Second, and this one clearly delighted him, he says, hardware is back. For years, the interesting action was all in software. Now, because AI needs new kinds of devices to live in, the physical world is exciting again. And the people who can blend atoms and bits, hardware and intelligence, taste and engineering are about to matter enormously. But notice the thread running through every prediction. The platform changes. Touch, voice, whatever comes next. The thing that decides who wins never changes. It is the judgment to know what to build, the taste to know when it is right, and the conviction to ship it before the data exists. New tools, same human edge. That is the bet Fadell is making with his entire career. So strip it all down to what you actually do on Monday morning. Fadell's message is not be afraid of AI. It is do not go numb. Use the tools, move fast, but refuse to surrender the one thing that is truly yours. Your judgment. Start from real pain, not from the shiny tool. Have the courage to make opinion led calls when there is no data yet. Expect to iterate because nothing great works the first time. Learn to tell the story of why and never ship something you do not understand. I turned his whole framework into a free one page guide called the Judgment Playbook. It has his rules for building things worth making in the AI era, plus a short self audit to catch the exact moment you are starting to surrender your own thinking. To get it, just comment the word judgment and I will send it straight to you. Bite size AI drops on Instagram. The deep dives live here on YouTube. So if you want the honest read on how to stay sharp while everyone else goes on autopilot, subscribe. Because in a world where the machine can make almost anything, the people who still know what is worth making are about to be the most valuable people alive. Full credit to Tony Fadell and to Lenny's podcast for the conversation. Now go keep your judgment.